Hey everyone, and welcome to our second edition of the Open Conversation. And this is just a conversation where we pull some of the most interesting people in the tech and business space in South Africa that are working on things that are trendy, coming up, making big waves. Last time around, we had Dan Wells from Eskom Support that shared a bit about what they're doing. How load shedding is helping them take it to the next level. You can check it out on YouTube. The video is still available. And we don't have a frequency in how often we do this. When we find someone interesting, doing something interesting, we'll schedule an event. So for you to make sure that you always catch our open letter conversations, or at least the open conversations, be sure to sign up or subscribe to our socials or on YouTube, and you'll get a notification. Hey, even better yet, why don't you sign up for our newsletter? We spend a lot of time during the week looking for the biggest trends that are shaping our continent and having an impact in a South African local business scene. And we share that in a 5-minute read every Thursday to your inbox. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But without further ado, I am going to invite in our guest for today, which is Ahren, from co-founder and CEO of Momint. Ahren, how's it going?
How's it going, Renier? Great to be here.
Yeah, lekker. Welcome to the Open Conversation.
Yeah, keen to be here. I've been a big fan of your newsletter for a while now. So yeah, this is really awesome.
That's awesome. So in the Open Conversation, I gave you some things we're going to talk about, Ahren, but I didn't tell you we're going to be putting you on the spot. So I hope you're ready for that today.
Good. Absolutely.
But working in Web3, that's what you need to be prepared for, right? Being put on the spot.
Yeah, definitely. I'm ready to dive right in when you are.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, if you're watching on LinkedIn, there's a comment section. You can ask Ahren a question. And if the question is good, we might feature it here today. We might dive into some of those questions. So feel free to jump on that and let us know what you think and ask some questions. Ahren, this isn't your first startup. You've been doing it for some time. In fact, I first met you at a startup pitch event in Cape Town a few years ago. That was before NFTs were a thing. You were building something else.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your previous ventures and what you learned building those.
Yeah, so like you say, I mean, I've been in the Silicon Cape, as I like to call it, and building and scaling tech products for almost a decade now. It feels weird because I still feel super young, but time goes really fast. And yeah, man, I mean, we started a number of startups. The first major one with still the same co-founder that I have today, Adam, was Job Matcher. And what we were trying to do was solve the youth unemployment problem with an app. And I think we were just young, very ambitious. We didn't look at like the hard data. I mean, one of the problems with solving something like that is the disparity between how many job opportunities are being looked at versus how many job opportunities actually exist, right? And the huge delta between those is a misaligned marketplace, and that's one of the things that we learned. We actually forged ahead with that for like 2 years whilst doing other things. It was like a side hustle. And when we launched it, it did surprisingly well, but most of the jobs were like in-person promotions for cheese in a store, you know, for example, or promoting a brand at an event. And COVID just absolutely tanked that. I mean, we built a number of other startups. We did Lockdown Boza. That was really an overnight success. Within 72 hours, we had like 1.5 million users. And we had just shared it in a couple of WhatsApp groups. So that really blew up, and we had a great exit from that. And that was really nice. We did Kuda, which I still think is an incredible business. Kuda Calendar, we were rebranding it to Now. Basically a Calendly competitor for the African market, you know, in terms of pricing and functionality. I still am like sort of in love with that product, but Momint is a much bigger opportunity, and I think a much more meaningful impact as well.
Well, Kuda, I remember when it came out, like Calendly was super expensive for South Africans, right? So I was looking at Calendly going, you know, I find this really useful. It's just super pricey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our strategy there was to replicate what they built. Their business model was also forced because they were quite early to market. They were forced into catering to B2B, right? And they pivoted to B2B sales. And they were trying to sell a business on a Calendly subscription for all of your sales staff or whatever that may be. And we realized that we're now at a different time in history where almost everybody's working from home. Almost everybody, like so many digital nomads, the world of work had fundamentally changed. And individuals needed this calendar booking tool more at a much higher frequency. And so we built it. It was really nice. We built it for the individual rather than for the organization. And the price point was just supposed to be, lower than Calendly in ZAR. And yeah, I mean, that thing scaled to about 1,200 users, just kind of bootstrapping, which I think is not bad. And when we introduced subscriptions, people were happy to pay. We actually had a model where we don't take a subscription, we take a percentage of your bookings because people pay on the booking. And that also worked. And I think that could work, but your percentage has to be quite low for it to be appetizing.
Yeah. Look, I think it's an interesting space, and I know you're fully committed to Momint, but yes, I think there's
Absolutely.
a massive opportunity in that space. Just
if anyone wants the code base, I've got it for you.
the pain of booking anything in this country. I tried to book a physio the other day, and it's on the phone of this person and that person, and if you want to change it, it's a nightmare. So even in that space, I think there's a massive opportunity. So there you have it. If you want the code base, Ahren will take a small equity stake and you can run with it. So So tell me, Ahren, then you made the pivot into Web3. What was before we get into that detail? What was the first NFT you bought?
The first NFT that I personally bought, it was technically a Ethereum domain name. So I bought a couple of because those are also NFTs. So I bought a couple of ENS domain names, and then after that, I started collecting art on Momint, on the Momint platform. I've got a couple of sort of my favorite artists, but I've collected quite a few NFTs, north of 300, I think. No. No, Rainier, have we lost you? Okay, for a second I thought Rainier lost me, but it seems like I've lost Rainier. So I guess I'll just check out some questions that we've got. Yes, I'm a fan of the open letter. Alvadoran asks, yes, I'm a big fan of open letter. It's a really, really great newsletter. And it gives you bite-sized information in a great format. So definitely a big fan of that. How is the interest in Suncash right now? With all this load shedding from the end buyer perspective, plus token ownership interest. So, hey, there we go. I was just busy fielding questions.
Thanks for running the show while I got load shedding.
No problem. Cool. So I was just busy answering a question. Maybe you want to highlight it from Alvadoran Palmer, asking what the interest right now in Suncash is with all the load shedding from an end buyer perspective, plus token ownership interest. So just briefly to answer that question, the interest is immense right now. It sort of feels like we're strapped to a rocket ship and, trying to hold on. It really is an innovative model to fund solar installations and to earn a return from those. So there's a limited number of things I think a person can do to invest their money wisely and earn a return over a long period of time, right? You can do stocks, bonds, maybe try and invest in property. This is another one of those methods. And I think because of the dire energy crisis, it's one of the smartest methods, not only to do good for South Africa to actually roll out solar quickly, but because it's in such high demand and such a need, you're sort of taking advantage of that and getting a great return on that investment as well. So thanks.
And I mean, we had a practical example of just why solar is so important, right?
Right now,
So if someone wants to fund my solar, Ahren, we need to talk about loading a project for
Let's
that
do it.
Suncash.
Let's do it, man.
Solar. So
Yeah.
we're chatting about going. We were chatting about going into Web3. Tell me a bit about,
Yes.
you started Moment in a time when NFTs were pumping. I mean,
Mm.
they're selling bored apes for millions of dollars. What was the original plan? How did it start out?
Yeah, sure. So at the time, Adam and myself were running a dev agency called Ebony, and we were building technology for a number of sort of big clients, and we helped them raise 40 million pounds over there, $1 million over there, like whatever for the software that we were building. But we were spread really, really thin, and we were looking for a project that we were willing to like really commit to for the next 15 years and sort of stop having our fingers in multiple pies and just commit to one thing fully. And we didn't know what that was yet, so we let that breathe. And when Beeple's sale happened, it really got us discussing the value of NFT technology and where it lies. Now, Adam
Mm,
had a great background in trading digital assets. Him and his brother had been trading game assets on the Steam marketplace for years before that. I had a background in cybersecurity and advanced cryptography. So I actually learned about blockchain from a fundamentals level, and then only afterwards figured out that financial models can be built on top of it. I was learning about it from a technical perspective, and we sort of collaborated that knowledge together. And the truth of the matter is, and this is clear from our docu-series on YouTube as well, we knew it was a hype bubble. We knew that it was a sort of like a hype phase. And our plan and our strategy was certainly to ride that hype bubble, but always underpinning it with building the infrastructure for the real value and utility of blockchain and smart contracts.
mm,
And I think that's a much more interesting topic of conversation here is now that we've gotten there,
mm,
we're really showing the value of a smart contract and why
mm,
that is such an important factor in the way the world is going, regardless of what your opinion on crypto is.
mm. Yeah, and I think that's maybe an important point that we can quickly touch on. And as I think there are a few people that have heard about smart contracts, but don't know exactly like what blockchain smart contracts. We had
Yeah,
Bitcoin that probably most people have heard about, and then when Ethereum came about, everybody started talking about smart contracts. So
yeah.
what is in a nutshell, what is a smart contract? Why does it matter? And why is it fundamental to this which you are building?
Yeah, so I mean, I like to use the analogy of a phone as well, right? So, what was a phone like a Nokia 3310? It was a means of communication, right? What's a smartphone? It's a means of communication that's a lot more capable, powerful, and could do a lot more things. So, I want people to have a similar sort of concept when they hear the term smart contract. A lot of people hear smart contract and they're like, oh, over my head. No, it's not. You enter into contracts every day, right? If I buy something from you, we've entered into a sale contract, right? And the
Mm,
sale contract has some simple rules. It says you get the item and the seller gets the money from that item. Now, in the real world, things can get a little bit more complicated, right? Like if I'm buying something from you and you have some suppliers, maybe you want to automatically split revenues to them. Maybe you want the money to go into escrow for 10 days and then come to me, or you can add all of these conditions. The power of a smart contract is that it's written in code. So there's much less room for human error. It can also execute autonomously. Transaction fees are super low. So property, for example, I mean, the best example is what we're doing with solar, right? You're essentially entering into a contract that says you have the right to all of the future revenue that this asset produces. And you can transfer that asset to anyone else. You can sell that asset to anyone else, and all
mm,
the rules governing those activities are written and baked into the smart contract from day one.
mm,
So if you didn't do it this way and you owned an asset, you would probably need to phone a lawyer and draft up a session document so you
mm,
can cede your rights to a new person. And that process would take maybe a week and it would cost you an arm and a leg. Specifically, when we're talking about bigger assets like property or solar installations and things like that, doing it with
mm,
smart contracts makes it so much more efficient. And it most certainly is the future. The other thing that we can do is do automatic payouts, right? So we've got an address of everybody who owns a token, and we can just pay out to those addresses very quickly, very cheaply, and very easily without
mm,
being a global dominating bank. Like I think ordinary people also sometimes undervalue where our financial ecosystem is sitting at, because to them, the user experience is simple. They go to a shop, they swipe their card, and they get it, right? But anyone who's tried to start a business knows you're paying like 3.9% transaction fees. It's sort of easy if you're only collecting in one region. If you want to collect money from overseas, immediately it's a nightmare, right? A lot of those problems are solved with blockchain.
And look, I think one of the key things that makes this different, right? Because smart contracts, if you will, before smart contracts, could have been logic sets that get executed, in normal code. But I think one of the key benefits, obviously, is the fact that we've got currency right next to us, right? So not only do we have the ability to execute the code and do things, we now have something that is a store of value that can be used within this movement and transacting, that can be moved around, which really just enables everything.
Yeah, we've got internet money, essentially. And on top of that as well, the contract and the transactions of that money are all transparent and immutable. So you can't go back and fudge the numbers after something has occurred. It's impossible.
Magic internet money. I remember that token. Anyhow, that's very interesting. So let's talk about the world before tokenization, or maybe let's just talk about, well, firstly, what is tokenization, like, and then in our world right now, there are examples of tokenization, even though it isn't a token. It's maybe in the form of paper or something else. So maybe tell us a bit, what is tokenization, and how are we using it without knowing that we're using it?
Yeah, tokenization is another one of those terms that I think throws people off and makes them think things are a bit more complicated than what they are. I'll give the example here of what we did for Nelson Mandela's official warrant of arrest, right? So Lily's Leaf Museum is actually the museum that helped Nelson Mandela escape arrest the first time. He was eventually caught, the warrant of arrest was executed, and he was put into prison, and that's when he started his long walk to freedom, right? Now, this museum was struggling immensely in terms of funding, and what the idea was to do was create a digital twin of that arrest warrant and put some contractual stipulations into this digital twin. One of those would be that whoever the buyer is, the first buyer, they would get 5% royalty on any sales in perpetuity, in following history, right? They would also get some exclusive rights to viewing the real physical asset, which does get kept in South Africa. So don't worry, we haven't sold off our heritage. And they would also get some IP rights so that they could use this in a virtual museum. So there's a bunch of sort of legal complexity that comes in there. Now, what tokenization means, or what tokenization does, is we put all of these legal contracts into a smart contract, and we put all of the data into a token that lives in the blockchain. That token is basically just a set of metadata that says, this is the name of this token, this is the legal contract that binds the token, this is how we act if someone sells it, where do revenues flow to. That's what the token basically contains, a bunch of metadata or information on the asset. And so you asked the other question, which is like, where are we using tokenization every day and potentially don't even know about it? Many people don't know that banks are actually busy doing interbank settlements using cryptocurrencies right now. Ripple is like the bank's token. So there we're using tokenization. If you own any Bitcoin or Ethereum, you're using tokenization. Those currencies are held as tokens. And there's many more examples.
Okay, and then when we talk about tokens, we talk about a token, a fungible token, and then there's a thing called NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
Non-fungible tokens.
Let's be honest, all of us, the first time you heard it, you Googled, what the hell does that word fungible mean?
Yes. Should I quickly explain fungibility?
Yes, just type it in ChatGPT and tell us what you get.
No. I'll fall back on my old school explanation of fungibility. I think money is the best way to explain fungibility. So money and art, maybe we'll use those two examples. So if I have a 10 Rand note and you have a 10 Rand note, and I said, Rainier, let's switch these 10 Rand notes, you'd probably go like, it's kind of weird, but why not? Like, your 10 Rand is the same as my 10 Rand. It's worth the same amount, right? So those two things are fungible. Fungible is just a fancy word that economists or accountants are trying to use to confuse most of the population. It just means that one is equivalent to another and they can be swapped essentially without there being any difference. Now, imagine a scenario in which you actually have the original Mona Lisa, the original painting. It's absolutely one of a kind. It's a work of art, tons of history or whatever. Now, I have a copy of the Mona Lisa. It's a pixel perfect copy. Even the materials that are used for the Mona Lisa are a copy. However, it's not the original. If I came to you and I said, hey, Rainier, why don't we just switch these two things? I'll give you mine, you give me yours. You would tell me, I don't know if we can swear here, but you tell me to go.
No,
Yeah, you tell me to go and yeah, it wouldn't be a deal.
yeah,
Absolutely not, because you have the original. It's
yeah, two different
non-fungible.
things.
It's not transferable. It's unique. It's one of a kind.
Mm.
And through mathematical operations like hashing, and without getting into detail on what that is, the blockchain allows us to create verifiably non-fungible items. I'm going to call them
Yeah,
items rather than tokens,
yeah,
because it can give every item essentially a fingerprint. And
yeah,
you can always verify who owns that item. You can always verify who created the item. You can always verify the history of sales for that item. And those are part of the reasons that make it non-fungible. You can
yeah,
assure, you can take a screenshot of the artwork. You don't own the non-fungible token. You don't own the original. You don't have the
yeah.
Mona Lisa.
Now, that's a great explanation. And if I can add something to it, I think where it becomes really interesting is if you were to add a few $1,000,000 with that fake copy and go, have the fake copy and a few $1,000,000 for the real one, then I might consider it. And I think that's
Yeah.
really what's interesting is this world where fungible and non-fungible live together. That's where we, in the same kind of transacting environment, that's where we're starting to unlock more opportunities, right?
Yes, of course. And then, of course, we've also got semi-fungible tokens just to complicate things even more, right?
Yes.
A great example of semi-fungible tokens is our solar cells.
Yeah.
So effectively, if you own solar cell number 115 and I own solar cell number 116, they are unique. So you could classify them as non-fungible. However, if we look at the terms and the stipulations and everything around it, they're the same. So
Yeah. So you
your
got a
one
profit.
costs $9, my one costs $9.
Mm.
The rental income or the airdrop that you will make from that token is the same. So
Yeah.
we could really swap them. They're semi-fungible. You can uniquely identify each one, and you can't divide them further. That's what makes
Yeah.
them sort of non-fungible, but they're semi-fungible because you can
Yeah.
switch them and they have the same resultant effect.
Which actually leads me to this question we got on LinkedIn from Gideon. He asks, how do you deal with partial ownership legally? Do you have legal ownership over part of a solar panel or just the revenue that you have rights to?
Yeah, so you actually own an individual solar cell. And that's part of what makes this project so cool. You're buying an asset that itself generates a revenue, right? And we forecasted what that revenue would look like. But for example, you could imagine buying a vending machine and putting it in a location, right? You can go home and you can sleep or whatever. That vending machine, people are going to use it. They're going to put in their coins and they're going to get their items out, and you're going to be earning money from that asset. It's your asset. You can move it, you can sell it to someone else. You have control. So that's actually what's happening here. You're buying this asset. It's down to a single solar cell. And the reason why that's important is because we know exactly how many solar cells are going to be on the rooftop of a building that we put on it. So we're only selling each individual item. There's a finite number of them, and you own a specific one. That being said, you're not at huge risk if just there's a smudge on your solar cell to not get your income. That sort of onus is split by a smart contract, so you get the revenue that's earned by the whole unit.
Okay, that's interesting, which actually leads to another question here by Dylan. Dylan's asking, my question is, what are the overall plans for
Maintenance.
maintenance of the solar cells? And will Suncash be responsible for the costs?
Absolutely. So maintenance is plugged into the model, and actually, so just to be clear, what we've done is there's a developer of these projects. So the Delmas High School in Tafels here was developed by Sun Exchange, which is another incredible business that sort of pioneered a crowdfunding model for solar. So we've bought up an allocation of those cells, And we're furthest, like sort of standing on the shoulders of giants there, and then tokenizing these cells. So you're buying our allocation of cells. Maintenance is costed in, and insurance is costed in. So that is part and parcel of what you're buying.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for this question, guys. If you have more questions, pop them on the LinkedIn event, and we'll sure to be getting to them in some time. So, Ahren, there's some companies in South Africa, actually, all across the world, but specifically in South Africa as well, that are doing various kinds of tokenization of things. Maybe we can chat a bit about that. What are some of the other things outside of solar that you guys have pioneered, and where do you think some of the opportunities lie when it comes to tokenization and fractional ownership?
Yeah, so I think what really excites me about tokenization from an African context is we still have a massive population of underbanked or underserved individuals. And especially in South Africa, we're a little bit privileged because our banking system is a lot better. We might forget all of the benefits that you get from being banked or having a financial record. So for example, even just your ability to log on to Easy Equities and buy some stocks that could give you a future return, right? That's not possible if you don't have an identity or if you don't have a bank account. That is, however, possible when we're trading on blockchain. So some of the other things that we pioneered is, for example, a really, really valuable coin set from the South African Gold Coin Exchange. So this coin set is valued at 1.2 million rand. And how many individuals have the buying capacity to invest in an asset like that? They're extremely rare coins. They're pre-Krugerrand. So I think if anyone is into coin collecting, or numismatics as it's called, if you're a coin fanatic, you'll know that Krugerrands are a great future investment. You buy those, you hold on to them, they go up in value. These were even before Krugerrand. So it's immensely it has a lot of history to it. It's immensely valuable. And we fractionalize that down so that you can actually own a portion of the coin set. And there's a future buyer clause there. So they can basically sell that on auction at anything that's 35% above your purchase price, and you'll just get it paid out. So that's a really cool way to give ownership to individuals, even if they don't have an ID or a bank account. They just need maybe a little bit of crypto, and we've actually made it so you can buy in fiat as well. They need a little bit of fiat. They can invest in the coin collection and hold on to it for a long time. We did something interesting with property as well. I think property is a huge opportunity going forward. We also did something cool with whiskey, right? If people don't know, whiskey is a great alternative investment. On average, a whiskey has like a 570% return versus 150% over a 10-year period in the S&P 500. So it's a much better investment than stocks. And the challenge for a whiskey company is that when they start the distillery process, it takes 15 years before they've actually got a batch that they can sell to market. So what we did was Carramore in Ireland. They're an 850-year-old institution, so a lot of trust. We had them third-party audited and everything. They fractionalized a cask of whiskey. So even though this is going to mature over 15 years, you can buy some now, and you can benefit from the increase in value over that 15-year period.
Okay, wait a minute. So now I'm getting a token, and I can actually either hold on to this to get the whiskey at the end, or I can sell it to someone else,
Exactly.
for whatever price they're willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. And I've heard some other use cases. I mean, one of the things I thought was really clever is, in horse racing, you get these syndicates that pull money together to buy racing horses, right? Because they're really expensive. But not only are they really expensive, there's quite a lot of risk, right? Your horse might end up being a dud and never hit the Durban July. So, you can easily fractionalize that racehorse into 10 NFTs and sell them off and really offer the people not only the ability to buy it, but to raise liquidity against this, right? And or even sell it if they wish to.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there's a really cool, I'm not trying to shill other companies, but there's a really cool use case called Z Run. I don't know if you've heard of it, which is basically like NFT racehorses that race 24/7. People can bet on them. You can own a horse, you can breed horses. It's a whole ecosystem that's very interesting. But another thing that you just quickly touched on there is the ability to collateralize these assets. And we've already seen this happen in a DeFi way. One of my friends another South African, but he's actually operating in the US right now, runs NFT-Fi. NFT-Fi is a company where you can collateralize your NFT and say, I'm going to put this up basically on risk to take out a loan off the back of it. And if you pay back the loan, you keep your NFT. If you don't pay back the loan, you lose your asset. That's really, really cool again, because you can start to do credit and lending, etc., without a bank, without interest rates from a bank, and in a decentralized finance kind of way. Yeah.
And I think that's really the power of this, right? It can unlock an entire economy where I think two things are crucial. One, the ability to raise liquidity against assets without having to go through an expensive and straining process. And two, having these assets be tradable in an environment where there's a global market where you can transact cross-border. I think that the opportunity that can unlock for economies everywhere is immense.
Absolutely.
So I actually saw another one which I thought was quite interesting. So I've got a bit like most people in this space. I've got a bit of a gaming background, and I almost got sucked into World of Warcraft at one point. Well, I did. Luckily, I made it out.
Cool.
And in World of Warcraft, you can obviously collect these items, and they had this auction marketplace that you can trade, and that's if you're good at a hustle, that's almost an entire meta game within the game.
Yes, yeah.
But obviously now, these items are NFTs and you can trade them cross-platform outside of the game, go wherever you want. And I actually saw people offering liquidity for putting your in-game items down. So you can put your Sword of Destiny as collateral and raise some ETH with that and try and take a girl for a date.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I mentioned that Adam and his brother had experience, trading in-game assets, that's actually World of Warcraft is one of them. I think there was a bone hook that 10x'd in value. There were some really good trades that they had done back in the day. But yeah, there's definitely opportunity for that. I think one of the challenges that the gaming industry is going to face right now is it's not going to work if they're simply looking at NFTs as a way to replace microtransactions. No one likes microtransactions, and that's not the business model. And I think a lot of gaming companies have taken that stance where they went, all right, well, normally we would give a loot box. Now we're going to give a loot box that's an NFT and, hope that it means something different. The only benefit that does have is that at least, there's a finite supply of an asset rather than the game publishers just being able to make as many as they want. And there's a little bit more of a transparent ecosystem around the value of those things. But what's more interesting to me is games like Roblox, for example, looking at letting creators create their own NFTs in the game and monetize their own IP. And that's how you get a community to build up this like metaverse, which is why there's such a big like trend. And I mean, a lot of people are sleeping on it, right? Like Roblox, we might not talk about it too much because we're all adults, but speak to a 12, 13, 14-year-old. Everyone knows about Roblox. Everyone's playing Roblox. They're a multi-billion-dollar valuation company, and they're built off of that paradigm where the players are also the creators. And I think most platforms like this, YouTube, Roblox, Spotify, they're all about being platforms that allow the creator to monetize their own work.
And it's really been fueled by this movement, which is the creator economy. If you think about it, like it's everywhere, right?
Absolutely.
So I just saw what's that drink by Logan Paul? Prime, is it?
Anyway, yeah, I think it's Primal, isn't it?
Or Primal or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. They haven't launched yet, but I've seen some people post pictures of how they paid thousands of dollars for the six-pack, which is absolutely insane. But how they built this multi-billion-dollar company in no time, because it was built from a creator perspective and not from a brand perspective. And similarly, Elon Musk, he has no marketing department in any of his companies because it's Elon Musk's companies, and he's building it from that persona out into the business. So definitely a shift in the world, and I think there's a trend there. And I think tokenization has a role to play there, right? So creators creating things, tokenizing it, using tokens as access cards. Maybe you can speak a bit about that. Like, what have you seen in that space?
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. We actually did this for our own YouTube channel. So for those who don't know, we created a documentary series on our journey from day one. So when we started Momint, We were already doing some recordings for Ebony, and we said, well, cool, we're doing a startup. We're going to record this whole thing from day one. And then what we did is we tokenized the channel. So right now on the Momint marketplace, you can go and buy and own a token, and that token gives you rights to our streaming revenues. So if we make money from ads or YouTube streaming revenues, that money just goes straight back to, it's distributed to all of the token holders. Now, this achieved sort of two things for us. Number one, we were really excited about the possibility of a creator tokenizing their channel or a video, and sort of having advocates who can buy into their success, but also benefit from their success, right? So if I'm a big fan of your open letter, and I know you're going to be successful one day, I'd love to invest in you, actually. And one day when you make it big, I don't just get to go, I told you he was going to be big. I get to go, yeah, I told you he was going to be big, and now I've made like $1 million because he blew up, and I was the first one who invested in him and supported him, you know? So that it ticked that one box for us. The other more practical box that it ticked for us is that YouTube can't be a revenue line item on our balance sheet. And we very quickly sort of got over like 25,000 views per video kind of thing. And advertising revenues were starting to come in. We were like, well, let's give this back to our community, give this back to our viewers, give it back to our audience that is using the app on Momint. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So I mean, Airbnb in the early days, they sold cereal to keep the doors open. Was this a strategy for you to raise some money as well to keep going?
Absolutely not, man. I mean, we priced them down as low as possible because we couldn't guarantee how much money this thing, like the channel, if anything, would make money in the future. So really, we priced it quite low, and just that it was an exercise to prove what was possible.
Awesome. So I mean, there's a part of that it is building in public, right? And there's a big move that some people are advocating for that says build in public, where a lot of other people say, no, don't do that. And I think there's pros and cons for both. Maybe share a bit like some of the upside and downside in building in public.
Yeah, man. So I think one of the big upsides for me, that's maybe just a little bit more personal, is that I get to go back and view all of that content and sort of reflect upon the journey. And that's really special and a cool thing to be able to do. The other thing is to show transparency in what we're doing as a company. I think specifically if you're in a blockchain company as we are, it's very, like, a lot of people don't understand the difference between blockchain and crypto. So if you're a blockchain company, they associate you with crypto, and then maybe they start associating you with FTX or some other stuff. So for us, it was a really nice way to show who the people are behind the company, what our ethos is, what we're trying to achieve, and sort of show that, get that level of trust in what we're doing. It's also been really great for hiring. A lot of people have said, I watched your channel. I love your company culture. I love what you guys do. I want to be a part of the team. And those are all kind of the upsides. That one of the downsides is I have had conversations with investors where we were on the final legs, like they were already sort of committed, and right at the last point they said, oh no, we went and watched your YouTube channel, and we think this is a bit of a risk that you're being so open with the public, and we're pulling out. And that's happened.
Interesting. So let's bring it back to the tokenization. For a lot of people that haven't gone into crypto, when you get someone that shows you MetaMask and all of these things for the first time, it's quite overwhelming. And that's an obvious barrier to entry. But what are some of the other barriers of entry before we can, that are preventing tokenization from becoming mainstream? I mean, I'd love to have my title deed of my property as an NFT, as opposed to, that entire process, by the way, is completely paper. They haven't even digitized it, let alone made NFT. So why aren't we jumping on this and seeing this as an opportunity as a country? Like, what are preventing these things?
Look, man, that's a really, really good and complex and difficult question to answer. The immediate answer to, like, why is this so slow? It's regulation. It's government and it's regulatory hurdles. So, I mean, we spent months busy looking at property and tokenizing property. From a technical perspective, we can do it right now. You want to tokenize your house? The whole system's built. Give me your title deed. We'll turn it into a smart contract. We'll tokenize it right now. The challenge is that the regulators aren't prepared for that, and they don't know how to tell the difference between someone who's doing something really great and someone who's potentially a scammer, and they don't know how to do that at scale. And the reason why I say it's such a complicated, hard question is because I wish I could be a diehard DJ and just sit here and go, no, because the regulators are all stupid and they don't know what they're doing, and like, they're slowing us down. The reality is we do need to protect consumers, right?
Yeah.
And I'm pro certain levels of regulation. Right now, I think they're too slow and they're impeding innovation. And I would really like to see regulators sort of be a little bit more proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
But I do think we should have regulation, and I do think we should have rules that sort of protect the public and protect people from.
Yeah.
I mean, FTX is a great example, and that's not a failure of regulation around crypto at all. Let's be honest, that was a failure
Yeah.
of regulation around finance, and we've seen that happen with banks in America. We've seen that happen with retail. I mean, WeWork was an example of that, and that's a sort of a property company. So yeah, man, it's purely regulation that's slowing down tokenization. And then that also leads to a little bit of fear and adoption rates sort of slowing down. So again, like I said, the regulators are reactive. So I think if people are pro this future, the best thing to do is like forge ahead and go towards it. The regulators will react, and they will need to regulate in favor with what the public is doing.
Yeah. But let's look a bit at the fundamentals there, because I think one of the challenges in this space is the fact that they're going to have to choose a technology to run on, and if it's going to be decentralized, they're going to have to relinquish a level of control over this, and perhaps that's one of the big barriers. Like, what do we do? Do we run this on ETH mainnet? Do we build our own custom chain? Is Polygon an option? There's because at the end of the day, there's trade-offs of each of these things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is control, right? So the reason why a government won't just come on and say, well, let's do a CBDC, or let's do a cryptocurrency to replace the Rand, and we support it, and the Reserve Bank prints the Rands, is because then they have no control over the money flowing in and outside of our borders. Unless they sort of write that into the smart contract, which maybe they don't realize they can do, because they don't have
put a few people out of the job.
And there's huge efficiency gains there. But I think it's just slow uptake and having the technical expertise. And I think there's another trend that no one is talking about that I love to ponder on, and that's just globalization and where globalization is taking us. I think we're really divided right now in terms of populations who are stuck in a geographical thinking mindset, right? Like they think, okay, cool, we're South African, they're Zimbabwean, there's a border there, there's a huge difference, and that's the way it is and must be, or whatever. And then there's a portion of people who either subconsciously or consciously realize that all of these borders that we've created are just man-made. They're imaginary lines on a map, and that's what globalization is. Globalization is saying, well, we're becoming a much smaller, more connected world where there shouldn't maybe be strict regulation around money flowing in and out of economies. They should be able to flow freely. And that will take away some power from governments, which is why they don't want it. But that'll be so good for people because, I mean, look at the South African government right now. If all of us had the power to very easily take all of our capital and just move somewhere else, they would be heavily incentivized to be a better government and to give better service delivery. Because the only way to keep and retain your population and your capital is by having a good governance structure and by delivering on your promises. So it's a great future. I'm pro-globalization. Yeah.
Interesting. So let's get back to Suncash. I mean, like the idea, there's a lot of different ideas that we spoke about. Why did you choose to focus on Suncash?
Man, it's an absolute dire energy crisis. And like I said in the beginning, like I've committed to Momint for the next 15 years, and we're a proudly South African tech firm. How can we be a successful tech firm in a country that doesn't have electricity? Right. That was the big sort of brick that landed on me. And we said, well, we need to do absolutely anything that we can using our expertise, our technology, our infrastructure, whatever we can do. We need to find a way to alleviate this issue. So we had a very hard discussion with the board on what margins and profits are on this project, and they're slim to none, to be frank. But the vision is that we're doing something that will at least help ensure the future of the country and therefore ensure the future of our company and our growth as a tech company in this country. So yeah, I mean, the idea was really there for us in terms of we were looking at ways of financing property in a very similar way. I sort of coined this term called PIGA, and I don't want to add extra jargon, but it stands for passive income generating asset. And
Let's
I think
go.
there's many things that can become passive income generating assets, right? Like
Yeah.
if you invested in a property that has a rental income and an occupancy rate that earns income, right? And all it needs is an initial capital outlay. Same for the solar structure. We need an initial capital outlay to build the solar, and then it earns revenue for 20 years passively, right? And that's something that we can make available to the general public. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I find interesting, I mean, this is probably stuff that can come down the line, but let's say I were to buy 10,000 Rand worth of Sun Cash, and I can then lock that in a smart contract and raise 50% of that in liquidity, as a loan. Then technically it only cost me half the money, right? And then as I get money to repay that loan, eventually I'll be able to own substantially more than what I would have if I only had 5K to spend.
Yeah, and you've just described the mechanism that many people have used to become very wealthy for the last 5 decades.
And we're going to let Africa leverage and make some money.
Hell yes. Yeah. But I mean, that's again, just coming back to the issue of underbanked, underserved, financial credit capabilities. That's what's been holding Africa as a continent back for the longest time. And that's also why we see the highest adoption rates of crypto in the world in Africa. Like many people don't know this, Africa is the leading adopter of crypto in the world. And it's precisely for this reason. It's because the banks can't serve the populations, but blockchain technology can instantly. And all you need is a device and internet.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So, a few weeks ago, in fact, last week in our newsletter, we covered solar projects and amongst other things, spoke about Suncash. But, there's also some interesting projects like Go Solar that you can rent a solar system from a company. Do you foresee that something like this can also be tokenized or something similar and become mainstream? Because at the moment, a lot of the projects that you guys have listed is schools, and I think schools are great because they immediately have the benefit. They don't use electricity at night, so they don't need that much battery storage. The panels feed into the school system directly, so there's a lot of obvious benefits for schools to do this, and for businesses as well. Don't consume electricity at night, don't need that many batteries. So do you see this being viable for residential, where we have the inverse, where we have people using more electricity at night and less during the day? Or do you think that it's always going to be reserved for daytime consumption?
So the commercials become quite different when you go down to a residential unit. And I'll tell you one of the key factors there. So school is an incredible opportunity for the reasons that you listed, but also because we can overcapacitate the school. And what I mean by that is we can put on more solar than what they actually require, and we can feed back into the grid. Yeah, there's tons of roof space. It's private roof space, so regulation is all pro putting solar there, and we can feed that back into the grid. And with the Western Cape's announcement, which I think a lot of the rest of the country will follow, is that the rates that you'll get for that feeding back into the grid are very high. They're quite favorable, and that increases the profitability of this asset that we've put out there. The batteries are really the most expensive component of an installation. The solar panels are relatively cheap. So whenever you can install more solar for less battery that the actual off-taker needs, the better your yields are going to be. I don't want to dodge the question though on retail. I definitely think there is a way to make this viable for retail. I think for a long time that'll be very case to case dependent. It'll depend on how much roof space you've got on your house, for example. And that'll make a big difference on whether or not it's commercially viable to tokenize it, or whether you should just take out a loan.
Yeah. Interesting. I love this comment from Gustav. I know he works in the financial space. He says, leverage, baby. We here for it, Gustav. And then Jock is asking if you guys would be keen for a blockchain conference. I think I know the answer to this, Ahren, but you can maybe tell us what you think about that.
Yeah, I would be super keen for a blockchain conference this year. We're actually going to be speaking at Africa Tech Week again this year. We're generally like on a couple panels there. Crypto Fest, I'm sure there'll be another Crypto Fest this year. So yeah, I would actually really love a blockchain specific conference because
Yeah.
again, I just want to highlight for anyone who's kind of listening, the assets that you're buying on Moment, you can separate that from crypto. You're buying a real asset.
Mm.
And like the solo, we're paying out in stable currency. We're paying out in USDC, which is dollars. Um, so you're not exposed to kind of the volatility of what the Ethereum or Bitcoin price might be at any given time.
Mm. Okay, interesting. And then you guys also have an event tonight for those in Cape Town?
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to plug that. We've got an event later on this evening at Innovation City in Cape Town. So if anybody is in Cape Town, Innovation City is in Kloof Street. We're going to be having an event talking about solar energy as a solution to South Africa's problems. So it's not crypto or blockchain specific. We'll be speaking about blockchain solutions, we'll be speaking about solar energy, and we'll be speaking about the energy crisis. The panel is consisting of some politicians as well. So we've got the Shadow Minister of Minerals and Energy. We've got a couple of other political individuals attending the event. So really, if you're interested in, which we all should be, the solutions to our energy crisis that we're in right now, I think this is going to be a good event to sort of attend and ask questions and get involved in solving the problem. Because man, if we're not all hands on deck, the future outlook for South Africa becomes slightly bleak. If we are all hands on deck, the future for South Africa is enormously bright.
That's awesome. And that's at Innovation City in Cape Town, right?
Yeah, Innovation City in
6
Cape
p.m.
Town. Yeah, 6 p.m. That's it.
Drinks and snacks.
Drinks and snacks. Pizza will be provided and drinks.
If
Absolutely.
if the drinks don't meet your taste, just go to Ahren and tell him you watched the open conversation today, and he'll buy you a beer. He's making lots of
Cool.
money with all his solar panels. He can afford it.
Oh my gosh.
Ahren, tell me, NFT conversation or a conversation that involves NFTs. For me, always I have to highlight that Justin Bieber at one point paid $2 million for a Bored Ape. So if I were Justin Bieber and I'd ask you, what should I do with my Bored Ape? What would your advice be?
So I'm going to let you and everybody on your open letter in on an underground secret, right? So I was actually in NFT NYC, so New York NFT conference. I infiltrated the Bored Ape Yacht Club and attended their events and parties. I spoke to the members of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So I know a couple of things. I can guarantee you, Justin Bieber didn't pay a cent for his Bored Ape. The Bored Ape was given to him, and he had a contract where he's never allowed to tell anyone that he didn't pay for it. But it was given to him for publicity. It was given to him to get people to talk about it, basically, to get this kind of result, so we can bring it up in a conversation and people are talking
all
about
the people
Bored Ape.
watching are going to go and buy Bored Apes, huh?
Yeah, so there's a bit of that's gone on with the Bored Ape, quite a bit. It's come out. A lot of individuals were given their Bored Apes for the publicity that it would garner.
Yeah. Awesome. There's another interesting question here by Jock regarding Suncash. So I'm just going to pull it up here. He says, last question from my side. How do you handle Forex with regards to ZAR to USDC and back? I'm guessing the Suncash NFTs are not offshore assets.
No, so the Suncash NFTs are in South Africa, and that's a very good question. You can tell it's definitely someone who works in finance. They are paid in ZAR, spot rate to USDC. You can transfer your USDC back to ZAR at any stage, so you can sell those USDC on an exchange like Blockcoin or Luno or whatever the case may be. So there is a slight bit of currency risk there. What we're working really hard to do, though, is bring our payout periods down, the frequency down, ideally down to a daily payout, so that you'll actually earn your income on a day-to-day basis, and that'll also help mitigate the risk to a large degree.
That's pretty cool. Thanks, Ahren. I think last question from my side. Do you read the open letter?
Of course, I read the open letter, man. That's why I'm such a fanboy coming on here talking to you. The open letter, guys. Anybody out there, if you're somehow watching this but not reading the open letter, you need to subscribe and read the open letter and tell your friends and family because the whole world is run by tech, man. And the open letter is a great sort of summary of tech and the world, and it's written like really succinctly. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahren. Thanks for being here, and thanks for what you guys doing and playing your part and solving this issue that are affecting all of us. And it was really a pleasure speaking to you.
Likewise, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to check out anything Ahren's doing, you can check out Momint.so or suncash.co.za. Or hook up with Ahren on LinkedIn, pop him a message, pop him a connection request. I'm sure he'll be happy to connect with all of you and engage further in this topic. But yeah, thanks so much for joining, everyone. And be sure to subscribe to the newsletter by Thursday to get it on in your inbox. And be sure to subscribe to our socials to be informed about our next open conversation. Thanks for joining and have a good week.